Welcome back to Dirty 20, everybody. Today we continue talking about getting into character by discussing personality traits, bonds, ideals, and flaws. Let's get on with the show. Now, before we jump into today's topic, I wanted to take a real quick look at the contents page of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Now, we're going to be getting this book in pretty soon, and I'd like to make some videos about it. But I'd like to hear from you guys what you think might be interesting to discuss. So, you have the character options in Chapter 1. Now, this is going to be things like customizing your origin, which is taking what used to be racial features, whether it's ability score improvements that get added to what you roll, which is an interesting thing that this is including. You also have the Artificer class, kind of reprinted from Eberron Rising from the Last War, sorry, which I'm happy to do another video on that. There is a new subclass included, the Armorer, which sounds really, really cool. But then there's a lot of optional class features and also subclasses that might be worth talking about. I haven't really got my eye on anything in particular, although I am interested by the Ranger, which has apparently been fixed. There's been a lot of talk about the Ranger not being great, but particularly the Beastmaster subclass and how this book fixes that. But overall, pretty interested in any of this stuff. If you guys would like me to make a video about it, please comment down below. Then you also have Chapter 2, Group Patrons. I like the idea of this, and I think I would like to do a video on this once I get a copy and read it. But you know, I've talked about how I struggle sometimes to justify why a group stays together when they have no real reason to. And this, I think, is trying to fix that. So, you know, whether it's someone who's sponsoring your group to, you know, progress their, you know, goals, you know, that I think that's good for storytelling. Then there's another chapter on magic, so new spells, new magical items. I haven't really done many videos on spells and stuff. But I like the idea of the summoning spells that they're kind of introducing here. Now, finally, Chapter 4, you've got the Dungeon Master's Tools, which I think will be very interesting, but cover things like Session 0, which we have done a video on. Please check it out if you haven't already. But things like sidekicks, which were touched upon in the Essentials kit that we also reviewed. And yeah, I think that there's lots here to discuss, but I'm interested to know what are the kinds of things that you would like us to talk about on Dirty 20. Now, getting back to getting into character, today we're talking about personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. Now, in the Player's Handbook, on page number 123, you have a description of what these kinds of things are. And we're going to look once again at the Acolyte background a little bit later to kind of narrow down our options, but there's a lot of choices here. And this is all trying to help us narrow things down to make our character how we want them to be. So, personality traits. Give your character 2 personality traits. Personality traits are small, simple ways to help you set your character apart from every other character. Your personality traits should tell you something interesting and fun about your character. They should be self-descriptions that are specific about what makes your character stand out. I'm smart is not a good trait, because it describes a lot of characters. I've read every book in Candlekeep tells you something specific about your character's interests and disposition. Personality traits might describe the things your character likes, his or her past accomplishments, things your character dislikes or fears, your character's self-attitude or mannerisms, or the influence of his or her ability scores. A useful place to start thinking about personality traits is to look at your highest and lowest ability scores and define one trait related to each. Either one could be positive or negative. You might work hard to overcome a low score, for example, or be cocky about your high score. Okay, so if we look at the personality traits that are listed in the acolyte background that we looked at in our last episode, which I chose for Hephaestus, we have something which is a little bit more condensed. Now, we're going to look at some of these examples and then see how we can really pick from anywhere, but these are suggestions. So, for example, you have this table, which is a D8. If you wanted to roll randomly, you absolutely could. I've never done it myself. I don't really like the idea of things just not quite working together, but you can always re-roll, or you can just read them, pick one or two, or, you know, use them as inspiration to create your own. So, for example, if we were to roll a 4, we could say, nothing can shake my optimistic attitude. Okay, not bad. If we rolled a 6, I am tolerant or intolerant of other faiths and respect or condemn the worship of other gods. So again, doesn't necessarily mean they have to be positive things, but certainly for me, these are a starting point. Now, what I tend to do is I tend to go online and get a full list of personality traits. And we'll put a link in the description below to get these PDFs, which I think are very useful. And I just literally comb through them. So you just get the PDF, which has a great big list, 104 different personality traits, and you just kind of go through and you start deciding on what you think would be right for your character. So looking at Hephaestus and the personality traits that I have chosen for him, I always have a plan for what to do when things go wrong. I am always calm, no matter what the situation. I never raise my voice or let my emotions control me. So these are ones that I have picked out for this dragonborn artificer who's very intellectual, but is also strong and young and kind of naive to a certain degree, but very logical. He's been very, very well trained. So this is kind of how I put him into words with these personality traits. Now then, similarly with ideals, if you look at the acolyte table, it's a D6 table, so there's a fewer options, but these often are connected in some way to your alignment. Now, our third video in this series is going to be covering alignment, so we're not going to discuss it in too much depth, but however you feel your character is in relation to whether it's the law, as in would they break the law to achieve their goals, or would they harm people to achieve their goals, right? This is the kind of spectrum that you're dealing with. But again, you have a D6 table and you've got tradition, charity, change, power, faith, and aspiration. So let's take a look at, for example, number 4, which is power. I hope to one day rise to the top of my faith's religious hierarchy. Interesting. Number 6, aspiration. I seek to prove myself worthy of my God's favor by matching my actions against his or her teachings. And that is supposed to apply to kind of any. But once again, you can turn to these PDF lists of, all of these ideals. And once again, you have a very similar kind of thing, and you can in fact see that number 4 on this list is power, and number 6, or number 5, sorry, is aspiration. So you will find in other books outside of the Player's Handbook other lists. There's lots anywhere. It's really more about how you feel your character can be defined by some of these things, right? Ideals. Describe one ideal that drives your character. Your ideals are the things that you believe in most strongly, the fundamental moral and ethical principles that compel you to act as you do. Ideals encompass everything from your life goals to your core belief system. Ideals might answer any of these questions. What are the principles that you will never betray? What would prompt you to make sacrifices? What drives you to act and guides your goals and ambitions? What is the single most important thing you strive for? You can choose any ideals you like, but your character's alignment is a good place to start defining them. Each background in this chapter includes 6 suggested ideals. 5 of them are linked to aspects of alignment, law, chaos, good, evil, and neutrality. The last one has more to do with the particular background than with moral or ethical perspectives. So, once again, you have these ideals. You can choose from the list in the background you might have chosen. And Hephaestus, actually, I went for several ideals because I was still kind of debating in my own mind what kind of character I wanted him to be. So, for example, friendship. Material goods come and go. Bonds of friendship last forever. Freedom. Chains are meant to be broken, as are those who would forge them. Freedom. Tyrants must not be allowed to oppress the people. Free thinking, inquiry, and curiosity are the pillars of progress. Knowledge. The path to power and self-improvement is through knowledge. So all of these were differing aspects that I found of Hephaestus coming from a kind of barbarian background. Again, I'm using Arminius as the kind of, role model for this kind of character. Barbarian who was educated, who understands the importance of these things, but also understands the importance of the other things, right? So it's that kind of conflict within himself to a certain degree. It says, create one bond for your character. Bonds represent a character's connections to people, places, and events in the world. They tie you to things from your background. They might inspire you to heights of heroism or lead you to act against your own best interests if they are threatened. They can work very much like ideals, driving a character's motivations and goals. Bonds might answer any of these questions. Whom do you care most about? To what place do you feel a special connection? What is your most treasured possession? Your bonds might be tied to your class, your background, your race, or some other aspect of your character's history or personality. You might also gain new bonds over the course of your adventures. Now, interesting, right? I don't think I've ever kind of added to them over the course of an adventure, but certainly, you create a bond with an NPC, you can add that to the list. For Hephaestus, I, again, had this idea that he was someone who had been brought up as a captive and when told to attack his own people, decided to rebel and did something very bad. So I went with, I'm guilty of a terrible crime. I hope I can redeem myself for it. But also, he has this connection to his roots, but also the people who brought him up, right? He's torn, essentially. My tools are symbols of my past life, and I carry them so that I will never forget my roots. I entered seclusion to hide from the ones who might still be hunting me. I must someday confront them. And the last one was actually one that I created myself, which I thought was interesting, but it was inspired by, again, these lists that we'll have links for. My adopted father Cornelius is alive. and my loyalty between him and my people is torn. Now, flaws. Here you have perhaps the easiest way to go wrong, I would say. It's very easy to think of cliched flaws, being an alcoholic, for example. But anyway, let's read what it says in the Player's Handbook. Finally, choose a flaw of your character. Your character's flaw represents some vice, compulsion, fear, or weakness. In particular, anything that someone else could exploit to bring you to ruin or cause you to act against your best interests. More significant than negative personality traits, a flaw might answer any of these questions. What enrages you? What's the one person, concept, or event that you are terrified of? What are your vices? In the Acolyte background, you have a D6 table, and for example, I judge others harshly and myself even more severely. I put too much trust in those who wield power within my temple's hierarchy. My piety sometimes leads me to blindly trust those that profess faith in my God. I am inflexible in my thinking. I am suspicious of strangers and expect the worst of them. Once I pick a goal, I become obsessed with it to the detriment of everything else in my life. Again, these are the suggestions that are in the background for the Acolyte. But for Hephaestus, I'd kind of already built something in my head as to what he'd done wrong and why he'd done it. So I went with these ones. A crime I committed prevents me from ever going home again. This kind of trouble seems to follow me around. The tyrant who rules my land will stop at nothing to see me killed. Again, that connection with my adopted father, or Hephaestus' adopted father. But essentially, these things are to help your character and also to help your dungeon master. To help your dungeon master get a better idea of how they can influence you. What can they introduce that will impact you, right? I also went with, most people scream and run when they see a demon. I stop and take notes on its anatomy. I found that like a quirky flaw, which I like. His curiosity, his youthful, inquisitive nature was something that I thought would be fun to play. And finally, I am slow to trust members of other ancestries. So, because having been born to Dragonborn and then growing up with humans, to a certain degree, he thought he could trust those humans and gnomes, but it turned out he couldn't. So now he's in a place where he feels mistrustful of pretty much everyone around him. All of these things are basically helping me to build a better picture of the character in my own mind so that I can roleplay him better. And I was thinking about this because it's a common trope to have a oppressive kind of lord, right, over a region. And, you know, if this character were put into that situation, how would they react? And knowing all of those kinds of elements, I think I know how he would react. It makes playing the character much easier, more fun. And these aren't hard and fast rules. They're things that you can develop, you can drop some over time, and you can adjust. Honestly, a lot of people play without even paying too much attention to them beyond the character creation part of it. But I think it's also a really good idea to go back to them every so often because they can refocus you. And if nothing else, you can change them to reflect who your character has become whilst you've been playing. So in the next episode, we're going to be talking about alignment. Should be an interesting topic. Please drop us a like if you haven't. Please subscribe. Drop us a comment to let us know what you would like to look at from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. And, how do you feel about personality traits, bonds, ideals, and flaws? Is it something that you focus on beyond that initial character creation element? Or is it central to how you play your character? Please let us know. And as always, thank you for watching and keep slaying. If you've enjoyed this content, then please smash that like button, subscribe, share this around online, and come and visit our website, www.lavictoriaproductions.com, to see all our past episodes, as well as our blog posts and all the stuff that we're currently working on at La Victoria Productions. Why not reach out to us and tell us what you think of our videos? You can reach us on Twitter. @MouthLaVictoria is our producer. We are also on Instagram. I am Enano LVP, and our producer is Jazzy J Cherot. We're also La Victoria Productions on Facebook and LinkedIn. Come on by and let us know what you think.